I think, yeah, we've got a fair few people here now. So I think we'll sort of, Mary, I had the pleasure to first meet you at ATIA. We'll talk about how later. But we were sort of both in Orlando. You were there with, oh, remind me, a scholars program, weren't you?
Yeah.
Sort of investigate sort of AT and how that's working. Useful trip for you?
Honestly, absolutely amazing. So I suppose, yeah, just putting the word out there, the AT Scholar program is still available. I think going to be for the next 4 years, I think.
So, yes.
So I applied and was privileged to go. And it was absolutely incredible. So ATIA is the big conference in America, assistive technology conference. Yeah, so kind of my background as a speech and language therapist is mostly within the field of AAC, augmentative and alternative communication. But I think going to ATIA was just incredible, have how much the vastness of assistive tech that we all need to be really thinking about. I think, within the disability community, absolutely incredible. And I think for me, yeah, I was so amazed that I got chosen to go. I was very shocked. I was very shocked that I got awarded the scholarship. And but just meeting some incredible people and incredible disabled AAC users that I've like followed for years, and just it's amazing.
It is very much an eye-opener. I mean, I remember before we'd ever been introduced, so I had no idea who you were. And I was there with Pro Study at the time. And I remember seeing you walking the exhibition hall. And I clearly remember you had it was either blue dress with white spots or a white dress with blue spots. Can't remember which way around it was. But I saw you just walking around with the biggest smile on your face. And you were just literally, one, because you were just like, you were sort of kid in a candy shop. You just looked so excited to be there. And we'd never even met at that point.
I was really excited. I have to say, though, I think the first day when I walked into the exhibition hall, it was like full sensory overload. And I think, in terms of being autistic as well, myself, I was a bit like, this is too much. So I really kind of had to pace myself as well. But it was just brilliant. I think just being in a community of people that are really trying to make a huge difference. So it was great.
No. Do you know what? I'm conscious. What we should do is actually share details of the AT scholarship. So I'm just going to look at James and Rosie, who are in the room with us. Could you look up the AT scholarship and see if you can find a link that we can share in the chat? We'll get that.
The two people that are going this year have already been decided. So so it's happening in January. Is it January?
Yes.
End of January, isn't it? So the two people have been chosen and they know who they are. But it will be happening, like, I think for the next couple of years.
Awesome.
The UK
you know who they are?
Professionals. I do, yes.
Oh, I don't think I do.
I think it's out there. So if you did link, you could just share.
But I've got to say, if anybody is interested, I mean, ATIA, if you get the opportunity, fantastic. If you sort of fancy applying for the AT Scholarship Award, that's super.
Yeah.
Talking
You're
about,
not going to say where we met then? That's interesting.
Good. Okay, we met in a swimming pool. Mary sort of swam up to me and went, "Are you Anthony?"
No, you were introduced by another Mary, weren't you? Like,
that's true. Then yes, yeah.
There was two Marys that went, wasn't there?
Yes. It was quite a random way. We don't just spend all our time in swimming pools when we're in Orlando. But yes, that was quite random. Sorry, it was the other Mary who actually swam up to me and went, "Are you Anthony Ruck?"
Yes.
And then she brought you over afterwards. So
and then we had a big slogan that you didn't have to be called Mary to be awarded the scholarship.
Yes. That was a fantastic way to meet, I have to say. Highly recommended. So but speaking of awards, you were also a recipient of an award through work recently.
Oh, bless you. Yes. So I work in the NHS as a speech and language therapist, and I also help chair our disabled staff network in the NHS trust that I'm in. I do private work as well, so I have multiple hats on. But in my NHS role, I was awarded the Chairman's Award, which was a huge achievement. Like, I was quite amazed, really, and I think just quite shocked. And I think the thing that got me was just how much he spoke on how much I'd helped reframe his kind of narrative around disability. So he said that to everybody in the room, you know, and all the people online, and how much I'd kind of helped him really think about how he thinks about disability. So yeah, so it was very emotional.
Well, very well deserved. I think you know, the work that you're doing sort of raised the profile, and you know, we'll come on to sort of your sort of your mission around sort of smashing ableism in a second. But the other time that I heard you speak, I mean, you get to all the glitzy places, was the House of Commons back at the start of this year for the DAT Europe event that we hosted down there, where you also put in a fantastic appearance, and I think gave the speech of the night, as I remember.
Oh, Anthony, you're too kind.
No, it's true. That's why we brought it today. No,
Yeah, it was interesting as well because the chairman actually mentioned that. So he did mention assistive technology in his little speech about me, which was good. I was really pleased. But I was invited to the House of Commons to speak at that night as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's a great photo that I've got of me and you stood together there that day, and I'm 6'4", and you're not.
I'm 5 foot. It's okay.
Yeah.
You can say my height. I am 5 foot. Interestingly, this is interesting.
Cool.
I'm like, oh, because a lot of people see me over screen a
Mm.
lot. And then when they meet me and they go, oh, you're quite small. As if, but again, it's like, oh, like what can you not be, quite assertive and being
Yes.
small, or quite like it's just quite interesting, the comments that I get,
Yeah.
um, as if people think that I'm this,
Yeah. It's I think it's a fascinating thing, sort of, you know, post sort of lockdown and everything else around that, and us getting to meet so many people online,
Mm.
and then you meet people in person, and yeah, it's quite a fascinating sort of you know, realization. I just to mention my wife and I went to an awards dinner the other night, and one of her colleagues through the Business Disability Forum has known Lucy for a number of years, but I had no idea she's got an artificial leg. So he sort of saw the pictures on LinkedIn the next day and wrote to her, went, "My God, I had no idea you were bionic." Because you know, we don't know these things, do we? You know, we sort of chat this way and we never know.
No,
So
no.
always
Uh-huh.
fascinating when these things come around.
Yeah,
Kerry
but
Pace
it's
probably was
definitely a good photograph, the one of you and I did appreciate it. It
one
was
of
a
my
good
faves.
good night.
Yeah, Kerry Pace saying a couple of hellos. Do you know Kerry by the sounds of it?
I
So
do.
yeah,
Kerry's
absolutely
great.
awesome.
Mhm.
And Michelle Farmer definitely agrees that good things come in small packages, and I'm not going to take offence at that. But thank you for that.
And
That's
fine.
fair.
Everybody.
I'm not saying anything.
No, I think we'll keep quiet. Yeah, it makes sense. So in terms of sort of, you know, the work that you've done, I know sort of from what I see, you know, that you post on social media, sort of your would you describe it a mission or a sort of calling, sort of the smashing ableism side of things, and your sort of experience around that? What sort of inspired you to sort of start getting out there with that message?
Um, I think it's been a real journey, like
Mm,
a real journey of my life. And I think I can't, yes, I have my professional hat on of a speech therapist and chair of, a network, but also I've got a huge lived experience, like a lot
mm,
of us probably here as well on this call today. And I don't think you can always separate them out. And I think I've just gone on this huge journey across my life of feeling, so yeah, I've got a limb difference, upper limb difference. And also I'm autistic and just have various other medical things going on. And I think it's just been for me of, growing up, I've been 20 years qualified as a therapist, but also it feels that, growing up and even within university and even sometimes within work, as though you have to hide disabilities and it's something to be ashamed of. And, it's just been a really kind of hard journey, I suppose, sometimes of what I've faced, but also talking to other people. And I think that's been the biggest thing, actually, is when you doing the network that we do and like meeting so many people globally across, you know, the disability community, and just seeing what actually people go through in life because they're disabled. And yes, if you want to use that term, you don't have to, you know. I never used to. And again, that's really interesting of the word and how it used to be like, oh, I'm not disabled, you know. And but again, I've like, people have taught me so much and I've learned so much and just had really honest conversations, and I suppose reflected a lot. I don't know if I'd call it a mission. It's a part of me. I don't know. I don't know what you call it. A call to action. Don't know. A cause. It's a cause, definitely. I do feel as though I'm an advocate wherever I go, whether it's to do with the people that I serve at work, you know, our patients, service users, the children and young people, but also my colleagues as well. And then just people, you know, just generally out in society. And I think there's so much in society that we've been brought up in an ableist society, and that, so I like to try and have that conversation about these are the reasons why we probably don't always recognize it, that it is in our workplaces, it is within us sometimes, you know. So yeah, don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, entirely. I think you know, the term ableism is I think a relatively new one. You know, we're sort of obviously all, you know, very aware of sexism, racism, you know, these sort of, you know, quite sort of you know, out there in the public awareness, whereas I think ableism, just from, you know, personal experience and sort of conversations outside of our sector, I mean, you know, everyone on the call today, you know, we're all fairly cognizant of these things, but you know, it's the things that people don't realize they're doing. You know, it's, yes, there are the people who are deliberately ableist. There are, but the lack of awareness for the majority as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And it is, and I think it's really hard, isn't it? And so for me, you know, like say for instance, just growing up with a limb difference, and now I don't wear a prosthetic like I do in the car, like, so I do when I drive, but actually I don't generally, like on day-to-days. And I remember going always to the limb, whatever, like, do they call them limb fitting centers?
Limb centers generally, I think.
Limb centers, aren't they? I never go, so I never know what the terminology is now. So I remember it was always like, you know, skin color the same, and like, oh yeah, because you want to like hide, and you know, but it was as if that's what I was being told, and that's how I grew up. And it was, and then I went probably about 5 years ago now, because I was like thinking, oh well, should I look to get one again, like just generally, just because of the amount of pain I'm sometimes in, because of just the overuse of this side. And I was amazed, actually, I have to say, of just how much it felt like, because there was different colors, and it was like, yeah, no, it's something to be actually proud of. And yes, I have interesting relationships with my disabilities, and so I think that's what I've understood now. So yes, it's not like all brilliant, but actually I can't, the thing that I say a lot to people is I can't leave my disabilities at the door. So a lot of people say, oh, don't let your disability define you, and I'm like, what, like how's that supposed to work? Like, I've had a full-on, I'm not going to say my age, but all my life ask questions, all of this, and then like finding out I'm autistic. Like, I'm like, my autistic brain is my autistic brain. How, like, it does define me, like things define me. So I have this like constant dialogue of it all the time, and I do now say, like, I don't mind to say, because I would have hated using the term disabled, absolutely hated it. And I now don't mind. I'm like, yeah, I'm disabled and I'm proud of who I am. And I think sometimes for me, I've heard a really amazing colleague say, because they used to use the superpower narrative as well. You know, and I did for ages. And they said, and I think, you know, it's not theirs, and they say it's not theirs, but they're like, oh, show me where the Avengers, I'll sign up to the Avengers then, if it's all that. Because you can kind of like focus so much on the talent, which yes, I do feel it's disabled talent. I do feel that we can bring things to the workplace and society. I really do. I'm very passionate about that. But I think as well, if you focus in on, oh, that narrative of like, oh, this is all what can happen, then
Yeah.
actually you forget about the need. So I have a lot of people, you know, who will say to me, oh, Mary, I don't know if I'm disabled enough to get that piece of assistive technology, or I don't know if
Okay.
I'm disabled enough to ask for
Yeah.
that support. And so then that's known as like the internalized ableism that happens really. So yeah, so definitely an interesting conversation.
I think one of the things that I always love about sort of your social media posts, and when I do see you sort of presenting, is that you're very conscious that it's your relationship with your disability. And, you know, you don't sort of say, you know, we should refer to it as a superpower, or we shouldn't refer to it as a superpower. Because I know there's a whole conversation around sort of that superpower conversation. And some people are very sort of pro it, and some
Yeah,
people are very anti it, because in some ways it sort of can distract from the fact that no, I still have challenges that need addressing. It's not all
yeah,
just I've got a superpower, I'm marvelous. It's you know, I've got all these other things I'm dealing with as well.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think for me, it's just about having those conversations, because
Mm,
the disability gap is huge, isn't it?
mm,
Like we know the employment gap for disabled people, the is it like poverty? I think 52% of people in the UK are classed as disabled who are living in poverty. You know, the employment gap is huge.
mm.
So it is about just having some of these conversations that are really important to start having. And I think, you know, I sometimes think as well, yeah, it for people and for children and young people. So I'm somebody as well, didn't say I'm a mum as well. Well, I said I'm a mum, but a mum of neurodivergent children as well. So it's very, very close to my heart
Mm,
of just how what they're growing up and how the society they're growing up in.
mm,
And you know, in our schools talking about disability and celebrating disability and celebrating self, and are they teaching the children about ableism? Like, because
mm.
like the amount of adults that I talk to that are kind of can be quite traumatized, I think,
Yeah,
by things that have happened to them in their life, or reasonable adjustments that they've been trying to get, or
yeah,
and I just feel we need to widen the conversation
yeah.
about it really.
No, I can agree. It's I just I'm just trying to say this diplomatically. My son goes to a group activity of an evening. It's a global organization, and they did some disability awareness training a couple of weeks ago. I mean, actually, it started. They were talking about drugs and alcohol to start with, but it sort of somehow sort of drifted onto disability, which wasn't part of the agenda. But the advice they've been given to give to the kids is that we don't use the term disability, because that is now not in vogue. We don't talk disability. We use the word handicapped. And sort of, I walked out of the session with Oscar, and he said, "Dad, is that right? We don't say that anymore. We've got to say handicapped about everything." It was like, no. And I've got parents in front of me and parents behind me going, "What's that?" Like, nobody could quite believe the
But
conversation.
you see, but that's an interesting where that's
Mm,
come from
mm,
as a global
mm.
organisation, because
Mhm.
obviously when we're in other countries,
Yeah,
Yes,
then there
true.
is terminology that is not the terminology that we would use.
yeah. Well, we
Yeah,
started when we first went to ATIA, didn't we?
Exactly.
The
yeah.
handicapped parking
It's
bay.
really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, we
And I
were.
think it's like I think the thing for me is like however people want to identify themselves, you know, but I think for me, it's about having the conversations. And I think sometimes what brings everybody together, like in the disability community, is actually the ableist attitudes that we face on a daily basis.
Mm,
So the barriers that we face, you know, whether it's communication barriers, environmental policy, inaccessibility, you know, they're huge conversations that we should really be having. And, you know, the digital accessibility space is huge, isn't it?
mm.
Of how we should be thinking about it so much more. Yeah, and like communication,
Yeah,
obviously, yeah, that's my bag of for you know what
yeah,
I'm exceptionally passionate about and
yeah,
advocate a lot. And just even in our practices as speech therapists,
yeah.
I know some of our what we've done in the past has been quite ableist, you know, of trying to fit people into these
Mhm.
norms of
Yeah,
like, right, this is what you need to be. And it's about like the medical model of disability rather than the affirmation and the social model of disability. And, you know, so as long as we're having these conversations, isn't it, and providing the reasonable adjustments that people really need, yeah.
I think that normalization thing is so sort of looping back to sort of your experience with prosthetics, and sort of, you know, whether, you know, the pressure is there for you to, for example, with an upper limb sort of prosthetic, is it there because it's cosmetic, so you blend in so you feel better, or people who meet you feel better, and there's not that awkward sort of, oh, you know, in our sector we don't think about it, you know, or we don't think about it, but it's just perfectly accepted.
Yes.
You know, same a recent conversation with somebody who was discussing racism, and there was a conversation they'd had where they say they were talking to somebody who doesn't see color, and his response was, but my color is part of my identity.
Yeah.
You saying you don't see my color takes away from who actually I am, and you know, my influences and where I'm from. And I think it's that normalization piece.
It is. It's the normalization, because yes, we want to be, I want to be accepted for me, but actually, I do actually want people to see, like, my kind of disabilities as well, as then they're able to then, you know, put in the reasonable adjustments, or kind of understand my needs, or as well. And that's part of accepting who I am, isn't it, really? It is. It's like, well, if you don't see who I am, like, see me as Mary and or Maz. I do get called Maz as well. But it is. It's a fascinating conversation, and I think it is about normalizing it. Like, disability is part of a human experience, isn't it, really? Interestingly, like, because I think I've always been really fortunate, and I think I've loved it. I've said it to you, that within the space of speech therapy, of being in the AAC world, I've just very much been a part of, like, the assistive technology world, you know, throughout my career, and, you know, working with so many incredible companies globally. And a few months ago, I was working with, you know, and because you're all disability tech companies, like, that's how I see, you know, but there is companies out there that aren't. And I was working with one guy, and they're not from a disability tech company, and we were having these huge conversations about this, and it was like, because a lot of people, like, say the word non-disabled as well. And then I said, also, what's happening is actually people are starting to say not disabled yet. Anyway, this guy in this company, I'm not going to say which company is then now, is really taken to it, and he's like, Mary, you've really changed how I've thought, and really getting accessibility spoken about more in his team. It's been really interesting, I think.
It is. I mean, the language around sort of, you know, the double negative sort of non-disabled is an interesting one. But, you know, I think, you know, when you look at the disability statistics, and how, you know, more people acquire disabilities as we get older, just get older than others. But you know, that goes through the, you know, it's his birthday soon. But you know, it's one of those things. I remember back when I was a consultant, and as an engineering company, and the HR lady wants me to sort of do some work with them to sort of, you know, explain the benefits of assistive technology and how it can be used and implemented. And the CEO basically blocked all of it. He just went, no, you know, we've got too much other stuff to do. We're not going to do it. And 2 weeks later, he had a stroke. And he returned to work after 6 months with a completely changed experience of sort of what that means. And it's not them and us, it's sort of not us yet. And, you know, that changed their view towards it. But I like that. Not disabled yet.
And it's an interesting one, isn't it? And I think it's just, for me, is about raising the awareness so much more, isn't it? About reasonable adjustments, about assistive technology, you know, and not making it into something that's like this, like, I don't know, but it's a human right. I always think accessibility, you know, accessibility needs, whether you need assistive tech, whether you need other things, it is about just allowing somebody to be the best of themselves. And so what can we do to help in that way? And my passion, I think I said this previously to you, would be, because the amount of people I have who say, Mary, I've never knew about that. I never knew about that piece of software, or I never knew that bit of, you know, that bit of accessibility in my phone or that was there or on my laptop, and I would just love it, of like kids, you know, in schools and just knowing these things, and then when they went into employment they just knew, rather than then having to fight when they're in employment. Or sorry, I don't think that's too harsh of me to say, is it?
No, I think it's a conversation that we have regularly with people, is that, you know, by definition there's an assumption that technology is okay, well, I don't need that. But what we sort of look at, especially talking to organizations and stuff, is actually there's a case in point that actually making that technology available to everybody, there is a feature in that might help one individual that's never had that opportunity before, or was an unseen disability or whatever that might be. And we see the same in education with schools, that allowing that technology to be available, it's quite an interesting thing. And Anthony knows I have a little bit of a bee in my bonnet about this with education, in that there's funding available for various you know, sort of specialist areas, shall I say, you know, when big thing around, you know, coding or things like that. Well, okay, that might be 10% of a classroom that are interested in coding. What about maybe 20% of a classroom that could do with assistive technology, but we don't have a budget for that because we spent it on 10% that are interested in coding? So why don't we do something for 100% that actually might benefit? Would be potentially longer term a far better investment of money, so that when, you know, they go to secondary school, they then go into college, university, the workplace, they've actually have an understanding that there's technology out there. Secondly, they've benefited from something, and actually they might end up in a role that is maybe before wouldn't have been attainable for them. And that's partly the conversations and stuff that we try and have, is saying, look, there is something available everybody can benefit from, and technology has moved on so much these days. But, you know, the days of having technology on one particular machine for one particular person, you don't need to do that anymore.
And I think as well, when we're all more aware, like if you're teaching kids at a younger age, and then, you know, they may then, as they grow older, know of technology that then doesn't just help themselves but then helps other people. So it's that ripple effect, isn't it? It literally is that ripple effect that can happen. You know, I know that has definitely happened within the speech therapy world to do with AAC. You know, it's like the, you know, this is something that's really good. We need to invest in it. So many people, like there's so many now, like I'm talking a lot here, but like there's a lot of autistic people who are quite semi-speaking. I don't huge speech all the time. I do a lot of texting. I do a lot of like sometimes talking in other way, like communicating in other ways. And so I think this is my thing about, like, it just feels that in that notion of ableism, of what are we saying is the norm, and we need to really start changing that narrative about all different disabilities, you know, all of them. And I think that's why I kind of say, you know, we need to not all be separate sometimes in all the different disabilities, because it's like, I'm autistic and I've got a physical disability, so you can't halve me. But you know, I've got a really good friend who's blind and is autistic, and it's like, if you just focus on his autistic needs, then what about, you know? And so for me, it's about actually bringing all the conversations together and being like, there's barriers here, there's barriers here. Let's really reframe and really change this narrative, and like allow people just to have what they need to thrive, whether it's in society or, you know, in the workplace. And I think as well, a big thing for me is representation. We've not gone to that. You know, have I got a few minutes left where I can talk about representation?
Please, it's all yours. The floor is yours. They want to hear from you, Mary, not us.
But yeah, like, I'm not going to say which films. I'm not going to say which films, but you look at certain films in life and you're like, oh, so it's really bad if I'm somebody who has a facial difference, because in certain types of films, facial difference, the villains.
Yes.
So you've got all these kids who then get bullied because of facial differences.
Yeah.
And then people in the workplace as well. It's the same with other movies that have come out, of whether it's associations of like how autism is viewed. And like that's a huge passion of mine, and I train on it a lot and talk about it a lot, on communication, on reframing the narrative around autism, and you know, being neurodivergent, and I talk from a speech therapy of just the kind of, because of knowing of what we've been told as professionals, as like, oh yes, and that's why I didn't realize for years that I was autistic, because I'd kind of believed this deficit very much model. But it does come across in so much in media all the time, and this like charity model, and so it's like, where are everybody in media? And we've done so much over the last few years, haven't we? I think we are making progress in society, but I think it makes such a difference, especially for children and young people, when they see themselves in a film or the TV program. Like growing up, there was nobody who looked like me. It was Captain Hook. That's who it was. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday about how I went through a horrendous time of getting stalked when I was 18, like really, really bad, for about a year. And the amount of abuse I got that this person gave me because of the way I looked and my disability. But, that was what I had growing up. That was my frame of the only person in media that looked like me. So I do just think, and again, I say to people about, it's not about photographing people because they're disabled. So I say in my work, don't photograph me because I'm chair of the Disabled Staff Network, like, and a disabled person. Photograph me, have you in my, like, and I have, and that's amazing as well, Anthony, I say about my journey, because I would have never I used to hide myself, mask so much because of my autism and my limb difference. I was just not confident at all. And a few years ago at work, I did say to them, I was like, okay, if we're really, thinking about inclusive recruitment, where are your photographs? It's hard to photograph so many disabilities, but I was like, where are your photographs? So of disabled employees, in the NHS, it's like, yes, we're patients of the NHS, but we're definitely, amazing employees in the NHS as well. And I say that about so many different workplaces. So representation is key, isn't it?
Absolutely. I just mentioned, Kerry's just mentioned the Lego minifigures that they did with sunflower lanyards, which I thought was fantastic. Yeah. It's impressive. I think, the one thing you sort of mentioned, sort of the representation, and we've literally got a couple of moments left, but it's becoming a little bit of a twee phrase. But again, it's what I love about the post that you do, Mary. You talk about your experience, and if somebody has a different opinion to yours, you are always accepting of their opinion. You just say, that might be your experience, this is my experience, and very respectful of that. But I think that respect and that, like I say, it's becoming a bit of a twee phrase of be kind, is so true. And I think, it really upsets me when I see sort of parts of the disability community pulling down other parts. And you mentioned just about the wheelchair user then, and we mentioned this on a conversation a few weeks ago, that there was a Doctor Who Christmas special, or it might have been a Children in Need special. And they took Davros, who back in the day, back when I was a kid, used to make me hide behind the sofa. And he was a wheelchair user, he was disfigured, he was, every single stereotype you could pick. And for the special, they basically got the same actor who did that, but they basically presented him just being the evil guy, undisfigured, and out of his wheelchair, stood there. And the point was, exactly as you said, stop representing the evil people as disabled and disfigured and all those things. And yet there was a backlash about sort of, how dare you take away jobs for people in wheelchairs? And it's like, oh, you try to do one good thing, but instead of that sort of, okay, I see what you tried to do there, be kind, it sort of turned into a backlash against, it's so difficult sometimes.
It's really, really hard, isn't it? And I think for me, it's not about, I think it's just having these open conversations, isn't it?
Mm.
And just being more, talking about culture, isn't it, sometimes, and that inclusion. And I think for me, it is about accessibility. Let's talk about accessibility and inclusion right from the word go.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, then people are left behind.
Yeah.
Like, there's too many now disabled individuals who are left behind. You know, there's an amazing person who I met at ATIA, AAC user, who had been so misrepresented throughout her life. And it wasn't until she was 18 that she got an AAC device. And previous to that, you know, she was, her, in terms of who she was and how she was, how can I say, because of how she represented, she's a non-speaker, and she would sometimes bite, she would sometimes spit growing up, because she was so sensory overload. That was her way of coping. And it wasn't until she was 18 that she got a communication device.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely unbelievable, Anthony. Absolutely unbelievable. And that's the thing for me. And so that's why I'm now like, yes, we have to talk about assistive technology. We have to talk about communication. It's vital. It's absolutely vital.
Could not agree more. And so the reason for having you on today, Mary, is fantastic person that you are. And from our side of things, from what we do, we recognize sort of the work that you're doing, and appreciate all the work you do as an ambassador. I'm going to say that. I don't know.
Advocate, ambassador.
Advocates, I think
I get called at work sometimes positive disruptor.
That's a nice phrase. We like that phrase. We use that phrase quite a bit, actually. We like being positive disruptors. So mix it up.
It's good though. It gets people talking, and that's what it should be about. And if that makes people think, then that's what it should be about.
Yeah.
No, I don't see any of that.
No, couldn't agree more.